Ladies and gentlemen, we are back today with another special guest, Jason BRINK, the man, and from Gala Games. How we doing, man?
Doing pretty good, bro. Doing pretty good.
That's awesome, man. Man, it's been a huge start to the year for Gala. We're going to dive into it, man. But I want to learn a little bit about yourself first before we dive into what's been going on with Gala and kind of your journey so far around the blockchain, if you will, and in crypto and in gaming.
Around the blockchain in crypto and gaming. I got into blockchain about 10 years ago now. And it's been quite an interesting journey so far. I originally got into the space because I saw it as a way to fix some of the problems endemic to foreign aid. When you look at, I spent some time in Haiti and I spent some time in, Peru and things like that. And I would see a lot of foreign aid funds coming into a country and none of it actually getting to where it was supposed to go. And the key problem there boils down to a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability, right? Because you send duffel bags of $100 bills to Iraq or to, post-earthquake Haiti, and they just kind of disappear. And that's obviously not a good thing. And so that was where sort of I began, right? And I started with a project called the Aid Dollar. I wrote a paper on this, submitted it to the Global Development Network, won an award from the Global Development Network and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And that sort of started me, on my journey in the space. I started working with governments and NGOs and things like that. And it was a little hard going because basically they simply don't move quickly enough to be able to allow you to really accomplish anything. They sort of do things the old way, the way they've always done it. And so that's where I saw Gala as a great opportunity. I bumped into Eric at an event at some point in time, and we started talking about the way that digital ownership could change gaming. He was one of the co-founders of Zynga. He's been in the gaming space for a long time. I've been in the blockchain space for a long time, and it was a pretty decent fit. And so we started Gala up. I didn't officially join until employee number 8, but we've got over 400 people here right now, and we're building and growing like crazy. It's super exciting, and I absolutely love it.
That's awesome, man. You brought up Eric, and I'm glad you did because I'm really coming at this from an investor side. I used to game quite a bit. Some of the games I played, Uncharted, and of course some sports games and things like that. But I haven't gamed a lot lately. But I'm an investor, and I know that gaming is going to be massive. So I was coming at it from that side. And as I was doing my research, I'm looking at Eric's background. I'm like, oh yeah, that little game Farmville. Oh yeah, that little game Mafia Wars. And talk about Eric a little bit and just how he is to work with, and just kind of your relationship there. And I mean,
Eric,
as much as you could share. I mean,
Eric is a great guy. Eric is a great guy. He is not always the easiest person in the world to work with. And I think a lot of people that hang out in our Discord know this. He gets a little bit spicy at times, but he is a great person to work with. And he has an absolutely maddening propensity to be right. The number of times where he has had some, an idea or a thought or something like that. And I've thought like, no, that's a terrible idea. That would never work. And then it freaking does is awful. It's very irritating. So in that regard, super irritating to work with, but it is a great privilege to work with him because he knows his business. He knows gaming. He knows how to put together a core loop for a game. And he is fanatically data driven. And it's a really, really interesting experience working with him at times.
That's awesome. One of the reasons why I was kind of drawn in initially is I like this idea of building out a whole ecosystem. I think you guys actually were stating this recently with some of the developments we're going to get to in 2023 that, hey, we've got a game for your grandmother to play, but we've also got a game that's super intense, super, time consuming for the hardcore gamers. Can you speak to that a little bit? And I think you guys have done a fantastic job already, and I know more's coming.
So this is kind of part of our widening pivot in 2023. When we first started making games for the blockchain, we were focusing on really AAA style games that are PC based. And the reason for that is that even though at that point in time, the majority of gamers were mobile gamers, the app stores were absolutely opposed to anything whatsoever that was, blockchain or NFT based. And so we just, it was a market that was untouchable. So we focused on the only thing that we really could focus on, which was AAA, games. Now, we made huge progress there. We've brought some amazing AAA games into the space. We're getting ready to launch things like Last Expedition, which is absolutely incredible and built by some of the same people behind Halo Infinite and Call of Duty.
Nice.
We've got Mirandus, which is an MMORPG. We've got the Walking Dead Empires. We've got, a bunch of really, really awesome AAA style games. But what we don't have is, or what we didn't have up until our announcement about a week and a half ago, was a bunch of mobile games. And a week and a half ago, we announced the acquisition of Ember Entertainment's mobile portfolio, about 20 million total users across a variety of different games. And this is something that we're super excited about because what it does is it introduces us to an entirely new audience. You have a game like Last Expedition. Last Expedition is a first-person shooter, PvP, PvE, super intense, scares the crap out of you. Like, absolutely terrifying. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have Meow Match. And Meow Match is a match 3 game based around cats. Slightly different markets here, right? And so with these different markets, this makes it possible for us to have something for everybody to play. And this pivot towards mobile, in the last few months, the app stores have softened their stances considerably. And so we're beginning to push in that direction. And it's something that I'm super excited about.
Aside from the shift and pivot toward mobile a little bit here this year, what else has changed since you come on? And maybe that
Since
can
I've
be
come
about.
on, dude, the entire company has existed since I come on. I started in March of 2020, so
Okay.
everything has changed
Yeah, I mean,
since I came on.
so maybe the better question is, what are the biggest changes you've seen since you've been working
I
at
would
Gala?
say honestly that one of the biggest changes has actually taken place over the last couple of weeks, and that's been we've been leaning in very, very hard to making sure that we're able to share more with the community. We've
Mm,
played things very close to our chest for the last several years as we've been in development, and that's simply been because stuff wasn't ready to ship. And in the blockchain space, it's very interesting because you have this split between please tell us more stuff
right.
and you told us this stuff 2 weeks ago and
What's
it's
going
not
on?
done yet.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Rug pull scam, and then they send you death threats on Twitter.
That's it, man.
And so it's like we either tell people nothing or we
Yep.
tell people something and they get angry in 2 weeks because they don't understand how long it takes to actually make a thing.
Yep. No.
Um,
100%.
Yeah, and so it's very frustrating. And so what we've done is we've really leaned in hard to sharing more with the community. And in the next few days, we actually have a document that's dropping that is the Gala Vision 2023. It's pretty meaty. It's got a roadmap in it, which is a thing that we have not done thus far.
People love
Um,
those.
and it's got some pretty deep explanations of things like our burn and mint process and whatnot, which is been driving a lot of discussion over the last couple weeks. So yeah, there's a lot coming, man, and that's one of the things that I'm proudest of.
Speaking of the burn cement, so
Yeah.
burning Gala in the Gala NFT store. What was the reasoning behind this, and why make this pivot this year?
Well, I mean, the reason for us, it really boils down to how do we create an ecosystem that is self-sustaining and can exist and have a great degree of sustainability and stability behind it for a long period of time. And in that regard, one of the most important parts of the ecosystem is the founders nodes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Without the founders nodes, you have no ecosystem. Without the founders nodes, you have no Gala. Without the founders nodes, you have nothing. And so our ecosystem, the way that it was originally designed, and this predates me, um, Originally, the focus or the emission schedule was basically a straight up clone of Bitcoin's emission schedule, but on Ethereum.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with this is that that's a terrible idea. Um, rather bluntly, it's just not
Right.
it's something that it's like, okay, well, people like Bitcoin, so we're going to do it this way, and then nobody really asked any questions. And by the time I got there, it was something that was already sort of set in stone.
Gotcha.
And the problem with this is that as time goes on, you have emissions that go out via the nodes, and you have an annual halving, right? The problem, though, is that that annual halving, every time that happens, that decreases the incentives for the founders nodes to continue operating. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you get to a point in time where the cost of maintaining a node isn't worth the value that you would get from maintaining that node. Now, from an ecosystem perspective, that tipping point is a very scary thing, because you don't want that, because you need this to continue working. It's kind of like, if tomorrow all Bitcoin miners flipped off their machines, the network dies, right?
Right.
And you can't have that. So this is where I sat back and I'm like, okay, well, we need to reassess this. And in order to give the nodes more runway in that regard, the easiest way to do that is to allow supply to be burned, to permit more supply to be emitted further down the road, allowing for more runway for the founders nodes. It's been an interesting thing because I did not know this, but people have no idea what the heck a burn is, um, which is
Explain it
kind
to the
of
people. Explain it.
interesting. Well, okay, so it's when you hear of a token burn, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that most people think of when they hear of a token burn is they think of an ICO. Okay, because let's say you have an ICO for XYZ project. XYZ project has XYZ coin or XYZ token, right?
Yep.
And XYZ token, they have a set supply of 200 million tokens. And when they do the ICO, when they deploy the contract,
Yep.
they will create 200 million tokens. So the actual variable in Solidity max supply is 200 million, and then when you query the chain, total supply is 200 million at that moment, right?
Right.
Because they've just created all these tokens. So then they sell the tokens to people, and let's say hypothetically speaking, they sell 100 million tokens. Okay, well then they have this one wallet that's got 100 million tokens in it.
Yep.
And in the context of their ecosystem, since no more tokens will ever be created, okay, the way that they talk about this to people is that we're burning 50% of supply and it's gone forever.
Right.
That's what people think a burn is. That's not actually what a burn is. That's just the way that a burn works for an ICO that starts at max supply.
Gotcha.
What happens, not to be too technical, is that when you have a burn, your total supply decreases. Your max supply doesn't move at all, because the max supply is just a variable in the contract.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so in a system like Gala, where you have a flow, okay, where things are being emitted, things are being burned, okay, every time you burn something, it creates more room for emission, but it doesn't mean that it gets emitted right away.
Got
So if you have a busy ecosystem, that ecosystem becomes, generally speaking, deflationary. If nobody uses it over time, okay, then the number of tokens that emits drops. But if a bunch of people use it, okay, and a whole bunch gets burnt, then the emissions ramp up a little bit, okay, to accommodate that. So basically, the emissions acts as a little bit of a hedge against volatility due to supply constraints or oversupply.
Gotcha.
Um, which is quite cool. It's basically the way that Ethereum works on proof of stake now. So I've spent a lot of the last week trying to think of ways to describe this and explain it so that people get it. But it's a bit of a challenge. It's good times.
No, no, and this helps. And I heard your conversation with on-chain gaming too, and super interesting conversation there. In that recent interview, you said there were, quote, some bold moves coming for Gala. I don't know how much you could
Yeah,
speak to that. Is that in the form of,
lots.
okay, like, yeah,
There's a
hit
lot.
him,
There's a lot coming.
hit him.
So I mean, we've got some stuff that's coming. A lot of this stuff is in the paper that we're going to be releasing over the next few days.
Okay,
We've got some things like a peer-to-peer marketplace that we're going to be talking about. We've got some things like a social based system for within games, so that you
nice.
can have your friends on the ecosystem and you can invite people. There's a lot that we're really leaning in on. It's about building a larger sustainable ecosystem so that everyone can grow together, and that's what we're focusing on a lot right now.
One other question. So a buddy of mine who's a big gamer, and
Mhm.
so I was explaining to him about Gala from what I know, and he said, "Is this
Sure.
basically like Steam for the blockchain?" How would
You
you
could
answer?
you could look at it like that. I mean,
Okay.
you could. It's definitely a platform, and much like Steam. I mean, when Steam started, right? You had Valve, okay, and Valve produced Half Life, and then they wanted to distribute Half Life, but they didn't want to go through the normal distribution network, so they created Steam, and then they paid for a bunch of other games to come onto Steam,
Hmm.
and then now everybody just kind of goes onto Steam because that's where the players are. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. That's pretty much what we would like to be happening.
So going macro a little bit, why do you think some of the major traditional gaming companies are so against crypto and so against blockchain?
They lose control. So you take a big you. There's two reasons. One is kind of a sort of bullshit corporate reason,
Yep.
and that is that because of the lack of regulatory certainty and lack of clarity surrounding NFTs and blockchain and things like that, there is a degree of risk that is associated with it. And so, as let's say you're a publicly traded company, right?
Yep.
If you're a publicly traded company, your shareholders, by and large, are extremely, conservative in their ideas. Okay, anything that for them disrupts, the flow of dividends, okay, is
Yep.
a bad thing. And so they don't want you as a company to risk in areas that may not be profitable or may have some degree of regulatory blowback. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing that I think that you see is that it does equate to a loss of control. I've been in meetings with very, 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 very large game companies,
Hmm.
kind of pitching what we are to them and hearing them say things like, "Oh, that sounds terrible. Why would we want to do that? We don't want them to own the thing. We want to be able to, cancel it and sunset the game at any point in time we want to. We don't want there to be any sort of perceived obligation that the game continues to work. That's ridiculous."
Yeah.
That we don't want them to be able to sell it to somebody else, because if they could buy it from somebody else at a discount, why would they buy it from us?
Right. Right.
Those sorts of things. So those are kind of the things that you're going up against. And I think that the industry has been very successful in terms of weaponizing journalism
Mm.
directly against um, you know game blockchain gaming.
Yeah.
You have PC Gamer and you have Kotaku and you have all of these different publishers out there, and the things that they write about blockchain and NFTs are so incredibly cherry picked, that it's crazy to me. I mean, what we're doing is fundamentally good for gamers, and yet they act as if we're single-handedly burning down forests and laughing about it or something like that.
One last question, and I definitely want to do this again in the future. And
Sure, man, anytime.
yeah, this has been awesome. And so one last question. So it could be for 2023 or beyond, but what are you most excited about in terms of the future? If you could
Ooh.
just pinpoint it down to one thing, what are you most excited about for the future of blockchain gaming and or Gala?
I, I am I'm excited for the moment when everybody realizes exactly what we have built.
Hmm.
Right now, there's a lot of people who have a tendency to think of us as, this little tiny project that has a couple games. You know, there's some people even within our own community who are incredible detractors from us because they don't get it. I can't wait for people to see what this is becoming.
Yep.
Because right now you're just starting to see the tiny glimmers around the edges of what Gala will become over the next couple years. And when that is fully revealed to people and they really understand, I think that they're going to have a very different reaction.
Jason, I'm excited, man. And we'll definitely do this again. And everybody out there, thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys follow Jason over on Twitter. Follow Gala Games on Twitter. That Twitter's been blowing up. I think you guys got like 20
A
new.
lot going on, man.
Yeah, a lot of stuff happening. And do we have a date on when that? Sometime this week, next week?
Sometime this week. Sometime
Okay.
this week is the plan. Maybe early next week at the latest, but sometime this week is the plan.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
And
Peace
thank you,
out.
everybody out there.